Welcome to Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth, the podcast where we explore the beautiful, messy and transformative magic that happens when we dare to go within. I'm your host, Robin Harris, and in each episode we'll dive into real, honest stories from people who've faced their fears, embraced their vulnerabilities and discovered unexpected growth in their personal lives, careers, or businesses. This is a space for deep listening, open hearts, and soul-nourishing conversations. Because when we meet ourselves in our rawest moments, that's often where our greatest wisdom starts. Let's begin.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth. And today I'm so excited because I have with me Fran Nguygen. I meant to check with you, Fran, as to how you pronounce your last name. But just to start with the usual introduction, Fran is a warm and experienced trauma counsellor who brings over 40 years of healthcare and mental health experience to her work. She's been counselling in Australia and the UK since 2010, with a specific focus on trauma since 2019. And Fran's background includes 18 years in emergency department nursing, along with healthcare work in the UK, Hong Kong, Pakistan, and Australia. She's also spent more than 6 years living and working in refugee camps in Hong Kong and has supported people experiencing addiction. Trained in the Richard's trauma process, NLP, and other counselling approaches, Fran helps people gently process trauma and move towards healing. As a proud parent of 3 grown children and grandparent to 3 grandchildren, she brings compassion, real-life experience, and genuine warmth to every part of her practice. Welcome, Fran.
Thank you so much, Robin, and it's lovely to meet you again. And well, let's see how this goes.
Yes, I'm excited to see where our conversation is going to take us today. And I always start with 3 questions just to help us focus in. So the first of those, Fran, is what makes your story relatable for others?
That's a good question. Why is my story relatable? Because I am a human being, for one, and I've been through so much because of what has happened to my ex-husband. Where did he come from? Well, he came from Vietnam, and he had lived an awful lot of stuff before he came to Australia, and I didn't know half of it. And when we were talking in the 1980s, we really didn't talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. In fact, he didn't even know he'd got it. And it wasn't until 2006 that I had realized what was going on. And that's where my story began, really, from there onwards.
Yes, something that I'm sure people can relate to, that lack of discussion about these things, not really knowing necessarily where our path is going to take us. And who do you feel will gain the most from listening into this conversation?
I believe that anybody who's got some sort of trauma, anxiety, depression, who is listening in now and listens to the stories, the testimonials that I'm sharing, oh, there is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel, because you don't have to suffer alone. And to knowing that there are ways of support and help can unlock your unconscious core beliefs that you've built up because of what's happened to you. There is excitement for you because there is joy at the end.
I love that message. That's fabulous. And what do you hope people are going to take away from this conversation?
I hope that people will find me approachable and listenable too, and warm enough to be able to say, I'd like that lady to help me. I'd like to have a chat with her about what I'm doing, where I'm coming from. I was just talking to Robin about the person I met in the market today. And just asking that question, she teared up and she said, "Oh, but I need help too." And it was so nice to be able to say, we had a conversation for about another 15 minutes, just like that. It wasn't planned, it was just spontaneous. And that's what it's all about. It's just saying, hey, listen, I get you, and there is hope. I can help you walk through whatever it is that you need to be helped walking through with, bearing in mind that I don't have all the answers, but I'm a catalyst to help you find yours.
That's what it's about, isn't it? It's holding that space from the position that you're in now, having been through the journey that you've been on, being in a position where you know this is possible, you
Yes.
know how you got there, so you can hold that space while the other person finds their answers because
Yes.
they're held. They're no longer needing to be in such a state of survival where I'm so busy defending my space that I can't do the introspection and embrace the vulnerability and explore what it has to share with me because I'm so busy just surviving, just getting through every day. But when there's
Mhm.
somebody there saying, it's okay, I'll do the holding, you can look. And I'm happy to ask you questions that will help to guide that looking and that searching and that exploring and that learning and that understanding. And we can do this together.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you've shared that your journey into trauma counselling wasn't driven by a career ambition as such, but rather by the life experience that you had. So, would you be happy to share with us a little of what happened? You've mentioned a little bit, but to tell us a little bit more and how that experience changed not only your work, but also you as a person because of that journey.
Absolutely. I'm no problem sharing about it. When I first came back to the UK, having left my husband because of their various circumstances, I was a broken woman. And it was by my dad supporting me and loving me that gave me the courage to step up and learn more. So, what happened to me was I married a Vietnamese boat person in Australia. Having lived and worked in Hong Kong, worked with the Vietnamese boat people, loved the people very much, and did not realize that so many of them were wounded psychologically. Because in the 1980s, we didn't talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. We just swept it under the carpet. Even for soldiers who'd come back from war, it was, oh, they've got shell shock or something to that effect. And that's not it. There's a whole lot more. And somebody who'd gone through so much, like my ex-husband did, it wasn't shell shock, it was compounded. It was one thing after another. So, for example, he would go to school with his schoolmate. There's always one or two or three people on a bike in Vietnam. And so it was quite common for two people to be riding a bike. And they were riding to school one day and they heard this bomb coming. So they both jumped off the bike. His friend picked the wrong direction. So what did my husband have to do? He had to get up, get on his bike, and go to school like nothing had happened. Nobody talked to him about it. Nobody would discuss the grief with him, the shock of losing his friend that day and never, ever having him back. That stayed with him for so long. And that was compounded by so many other things that he saw. And then his experience traveling from Vietnam via Thailand to Hong Kong, no, to, sorry, via Thailand to Australia, he saw so many things that added to his trauma. So it was on one thing after another, and he kept shoving everything down. And it wasn't until 2006, when I just started my counseling course, that he was involved in a car accident. And he was stationary at traffic lights. And there were 5 cars waiting at the traffic lights. And this girl came up to the back of him, bang. She was going at 90 kph in a 50 kph zone. What he heard was a bomb going off. And so all the stuff that he'd pushed down, just basically exploded. So he personally imploded. And all that stuff that he'd been hiding from came to his forefront of his mind. And he said it was like video loops going round and round, and he said he couldn't turn them off. And I didn't have the off button. I didn't know how to help him. So we tried so many different things, and nothing seemed to work. In the end, it got dangerous to stay with him because he was threatening our lives. So in the end, we had to leave. And I don't think he's ever resolved anything. So I don't know where he's at now, because he doesn't talk to any of us anymore. And that's his choice.
In the learning that I have done, we talk about UDINs, so something that's unexpected, that's dramatic, that's isolating, not as in there's nobody around you at the time, but as in, I can't talk about this, or there's no opportunity, or, you know, nobody's helping me to talk about this stuff, nobody's encouraging me to talk about this stuff. And also that I feel I have no coping strategy. So if you think of that young boy on the bicycle with his friend, and all of a sudden his friend is gone. How do you, as a young child, process that anyway? You don't have necessarily a sense. I don't obviously know what age he was, but he was still at school. So you don't have a sense of that length of time, do you? You have a sense of never. But what does that mean in relation to my life, which has only been, you know, enough probably to count on two hands? And it's that enormity. And it's definitely dramatic. It's definitely unexpected. And like you say, he was isolated. Nobody talked to him. Nobody helped him. Nobody sat down and asked him how he felt about what had happened. And what coping strategy could you possibly have, particularly at a young age, when you don't have all of that life experience behind you yet? And you talked about the soldiers who maybe went off to war, came back, and it was called shell shock. What does that even mean? It's a nice, neat label, but it's like a way of packaging it up so that we don't know what it means and we don't talk about it. And soldiers, certainly, you think of the First World War, Second World War, the soldiers came back and they didn't talk. And there was no support for them to talk. You hear so many stories where fathers came back and just somehow, in some way, got back into life, carried on as best they could, but they never talked about their experiences. Probably not to one another much either. And yeah, it's not very supportive. I think there's so much more. Thankfully, we do talk about these things more, and there is more for men as well to open up, and veterans to open up and support for them now than there was. But yes, you just think of the ripples that go out from those situations. And I was part of a research project some years ago now, and we looked at that label PTSD. We said for the people that we were working with, it wasn't post, because we were working with people who were going back into those situations day after day after day. They had no chance for it to be post and to do anything to support themselves in some form of recovery or getting back to normal, because it was every day. It was just ongoing. And even if that's in your head, like you talked about the video loops that your ex-husband went through, it's continuous. It's not post.
No.
And the D stands for disorder. But we were saying this isn't a disorder. This is our bodies doing what they're designed to do. It's a response. Unfortunately, it goes on and doesn't become a supportive response because we can get stuck in those loops. But it's not a disorder. So I think there's so much work that we can still do around that, and the kind of information and awareness. So I think it's amazing that you're doing what you're doing, because that's furthering that change and challenging those concepts.
I love what you've just said, and I also think it's very important to be aware of how isolating it can be and how necessary it is to open up and talk about things. For the more recent troops who've gone over to Afghanistan or Iraq or even in Gaza, to see what's going on and say that nobody understands what they've gone through because you weren't there. That's true to a certain extent, but we can listen. And by giving that gift of listening and giving them the sense of being heard is really helping people to understand that you're not on your own. And I can help you to turn off those video loops and to put it into the filing cabinet with saying, this is over now. I am safe now. And it's not eradicating the memory. It's helping you to park it in that filing cabinet saying, I was there, but I'm not there any longer. And to be able to get on with changing your life and living with the hope that there is a future without having to carry those video loops forever. That's what's
Definitely.
powerful.
Yeah, that was then and this is now. And
Exactly.
the idea that the thing that you experience doesn't change, but your
No,
relationship to it can change.
exactly. Yes.
Thank you. And you've said that in you sharing some of your own story, you mean you gave the example just from this morning at the market, that has helped clients, other people to feel safe enough to open up and to share their story. What have vulnerability and authenticity taught you about healing and that human connection that you're talking about? So moving from that sense of isolation, I can't talk to anybody, nobody's going to understand, nobody's going to get it because they weren't there, which is true. But at the same time, I don't have to be isolated in that. Other people can hear.
Thank you for that question. I have a testimonial to one chap who came to see me because he had been standing on a bridge about to jump. He was ex-army. His video loops were playing in his head, and he thought, I can't do this anymore. He wanted to end it. Fortunately for him, some people stopped him from jumping, talked him off the bridge, and then two different people, his son being one of them, gave him my name, and he came to see me. He came to see me in person, but this works just as well online. But he sat down in the chair in the office, in the house I was staying in at the time. And you could see skepticism written across his face. Here we go, another bloody counsellor. What fat lot of good is this going to do me? It's a woman and she doesn't know what I've been through. 2 hours we talked. He'd never met me before in my life or his life. And I explained to him how TRTP works, the Richard's Trauma Process. I explained to him that this is what's going to help you and this is how we're going to do it. I did all the paperwork for him because he was dyslexic and he didn't want to do all that. So I said, let's do this. So we did all that. And then we did the first step of the process. And at the end of 2 hours, he had a funny look on his face. And I said to him, what's wrong? And he said, I'm trying to trigger myself, but I can't. I said, good. He went away, came back 1 week later. He sat down very heavily in the chair and he said, I've tried all week to trigger myself and I still can't. And I said, good. That means the mumbo jumbo stuff I'm talking about works. Yeah, I suppose so. He wasn't very convinced, but he went home basically a changed man. His family saw the difference. I have seen 5 members of his family now because they saw the change in their dad, their friend, whatever. And it is a powerful process. It's dependent on the person wanting to change, wanting to let go of stuff and wanting to be well. This man has moved on and has done some amazing things. He's walked the Namibia desert. He's done so much more in the area that he loves. And it's been so rewarding to watch him over the 6 years. And that's been a pleasure to watch him develop and grow and find his joy, if you like. Now, I'm not saying that life is all plain sailing, not at all, but it's a lot better than it was. And isn't that what we all want? A better life? Yeah, it works.
I love the work of Gabor Mate, and he talks about it's not about feeling better, it's about feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because I've had people come to me with the expectation that, and there kind of is this subliminal, unconscious kind of sense that we get to a certain point in life and got it sorted. Everything is. I think the kind of fairy tale idea of, and they got married and lived happily ever after. Whoever got married and lived happily ever after? Marriage takes work. Life throws you curveballs. Things happen to you and your family. You lose loved ones for one reason or in one way or another. Life is never plain sailing. I don't think it's meant to be. But when it's more joy than it is struggle, I think then you're on a good thing. And I think that when we can own our agency and we can address things that feel challenging for us and find something that really spurs us on and motivates us, then that is the best way of getting as much as we can out of life. Because I think life is about experiencing and about learning who we are as an individual and how we can express that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that idea that guy has now been able to move forward, and also you talked about how he was trying really, really hard to re-trigger himself. I'm a practitioner of EFT, emotional freedom technique tapping, and that's something that we gently explore with somebody if they've done a tapping process and have a sense that something's shifted. I think it's gone. I think I'm okay. And we just gently, let's try this then, and introduce something that before would have been a slight trigger, and then just gently increase that. And if nothing happens, they don't get re-triggered, then yeah, it looks like this has shifted, this has gone, you've released this. And if you find anything, obviously you stop as soon as you find it, and then you do a little bit more until that process is completed. But it's such a confirmation for the person as well. I've tried really hard and it's just not working. It's just not there anymore. I can't find it.
I must tell another story. Judith, when she put this together, she met this chap who's an ex-Rhodesian army guy who got severe complex PTSD, and he said, nothing can help me at all. And she said, well, I think I can help you, but what have you got to lose? Give me a go. So he said, oh, right then. And he went to see her, and she literally threw the whole of TRTP at him at one go, which is not what we do, but he needed to have this enforced for him. So he had the whole session, and he came out and go, wow, what just happened to me? Across the road was the cinema showing Saving Private Ryan. Oh, he said, I'll go and watch that film. If anything's going to trigger me, that film's bound to. So he went into the cinema and watched the film. No triggers. He thought I must have dozed off or something. So he checked himself out and he checked himself back into the cinema and watched the whole film again. Still no triggers. Quote unquote, this shit works. So much so that he himself is a TRTP practitioner. His wife became one until he got so busy that she's now his admin person. So he can just concentrate on seeing people and helping people to get well. He is still a mentor for all of us TRTP practitioners, and he's still a very good friend of Judith Richards. So it just goes to show this shit works.
Absolutely. And that's, that is so telling, isn't it? When somebody experiences a process, learns the process so that they can support other people, and also when they then go on to, right, how am I going to share this so that I'm not the only one doing it, or I'm not the only one I know doing it, because I've done that with EFT and with another thing that I do called meta consciousness, because we see how transformational we feel, we experience how transformational they are, and then the joy of sharing that with others and seeing them have that light bulb moment as well.
I love
And
that
you,
light bulb moment. Yes, absolutely. Wow, it works.
exactly, yeah. And you've talked about how trauma doesn't just affect the person themselves, it affects those around them. So it's rippling out through their families, through their friendships, through their relationships. What do you wish that more people understood about living alongside? So, like the woman you talked about in the marketplace this morning, living alongside somebody who's carrying the trauma.
Well, having done that for 23 years, and obviously he wasn't bad all the time, but there were times when it was very, very difficult. We've seen how it was best not to do things. But what I enjoy now particularly is if people take this process and they apply it to themselves, it's going to have a ripple effect. So my most recent client was struggling with family relationships and so on and so forth. And she applied it to herself, and then she took it to her siblings and step siblings. And the ripple effect has changed the whole family dynamic. So it's not just impacting on her, it's impacting the whole of her personal tribe. And that is a joy, because then you're not bringing healing just to one person, but to many. And then it's going to ripple on further to the children and further out to maybe friends and so on and so forth. So it is something that is an ongoing thing. It's not saying everything's going to be perfect. I must underline that. But it does make a big difference. And people will find that they'll get better job opportunities. They'll get, maybe finance will become better. So there's all sorts of things that are possible with this process. A bit like you saying with your EFT and your other
Meta
thing.
consciousness, yes.
I'm also doing another course now for advanced somatic EMDR, which is also focusing on how to help people out of trauma, but I'm adding a string to my bow. I've added several strings to my bow along the years, and it is fun to keep learning and expanding one's knowledge. So I could use this, or I could use that. So just growing constantly, doing a better service so that help more people. That's what I aim to do. Excuse me.
That's beautiful, thank you. And I think that's a lovely note on which to draw this to a close. But before we go, I'm sure there are people tuning into this and thinking, oh my goodness, I need to talk to Fran. So would you just share with us how people can connect with you?
Yes, please do reach out to me. My website has got a button that you can click and connect with me, or you can find me on LinkedIn and connect through that. Or if you go Facebook, I'm also on there. So please reach out, have a chat with me. I do love to just talk to people and have an introductory chat and find out whether a fit or whether it can help you or not. Whether you'd like to give it a go and see whether you can find perhaps a solution for yourself, that would be exciting. So do reach out and have a chat. Thank you so much.
Fabulous, Fran, thank you. And as always, Fran's links will be below this video. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Do please remember to hit the subscribe button if you'd like to stay following this series. And if there's something in this video that you think would be helpful for anybody that you know, feel free to pass on the link. Thank you for joining us today, and maybe see you again next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth. I hope it's given you a moment to breathe, reflect, and perhaps even see your own story with a little more compassion. If you find this conversation meaningful, I'd love it if you'd share, subscribe, or leave a review. It helps others find their way here too. Until next time, take gentle care, and remember, the journey inwards is where the real growth begins.